Few topics in recent years have been more controversial than vaccines, and few names have carried as much weight in that debate as Pfizer. The company became a household name during the COVID-19 pandemic when its mRNA-based vaccine was rolled out to billions of people. For some, it represented a breakthrough in science, a tool that saved countless lives. For others, it raised deep questions about safety, transparency, and long-term consequences. But what if the vaccine meant to save us, rewrote us? Now a new question has surfaced, and it is one that strikes at the heart of modern biology. Are we now living with modified DNA? Put another way, did Pfizer's mRNA technology do more than simply create temporary immunity? Could it intentionally or not have altered something fundamental in the human genome? Pfizer promised it couldn't touch our DNA, but what if that promise was wrong? This is not a simple question. It requires unpacking science, politics, and public trust. It requires examining both what is known and what remains uncertain. Above all, it requires confronting the uncomfortable reality that science and industry do not always tell the full story in real time. How mRNA technology works. To understand the controversy, we need to begin with the basics of mRNA technology. Traditional vaccines introduce weakened or inactive parts of a virus to train the immune system. The Pfizer vaccine, along with Moderna's, used a different approach. It delivered messenger RNA, a genetic instruction manual that told human cells to produce a harmless piece of the virus's spike protein. The immune system then learned to recognize and fight that protein, building protection against COVID-19. In theory, this is temporary. Messenger RNA does not integrate into the DNA of human cells. Instead, it degrades within days. The central claim made by Pfizer regulators and health authorities was clear: the vaccine cannot alter DNA. That promise was a foundation of the public campaign for safety. But think about it. Your body was told to manufacture something unnatural. Can we be certain the body forgets? Why people ask about DNA modification? Despite those assurances, questions never went away. Part of this comes from a simple truth: most people do not distinguish between RNA and DNA. Both sound like genetic material, and the idea of introducing one into the body naturally raises concerns about the other. But there is also a deeper reason. A number of scientific studies have explored whether under certain conditions RNA can be reverse transcribed into DNA. This process involves enzymes such as reverse transcriptase, which exist in the body through natural mechanisms like retrotransposons. That possibility raised theoretical concerns. Could mRNA from vaccines be copied into DNA and integrated into the genome? The scariest part: if changes happen, they might be invisible for years, until it's too late. The controversy around Pfizer. Pfizer's position has always been firm. The company insists that its vaccine cannot change DNA, but critics point to two areas of concern. First, Pfizer has been accused of being less than transparent in releasing data from clinical trials. Some argue that side effects were underreported or poorly studied. Second, independent labs have claimed to detect DNA fragments in certain batches of the vaccine. These fragments, left over from the manufacturing process, have raised fears about contamination. Science says it's impossible, but history is filled with things once labeled impossible until they happened. The scientific consensus remains that such fragments, if present, would not integrate into human DNA in a meaningful way. But the optics of the situation, the idea that DNA material might exist in a mRNA vaccine, fuel suspicions. The role of trust and transparency. Science is not only about data, it is about trust. During the pandemic, governments rushed to roll out vaccines under emergency authorizations. That speed saved lives, but it also created space for mistrust. People asked whether corners had been cut. They wondered whether pharmaceutical companies, with billions in profits on the line, had incentives to hide risks. Pfizer's reputation complicates matters further. The company has paid billions in past settlements for issues unrelated to vaccines, from marketing violations to pricing controversies. For critics, this history raises doubts about whether Pfizer can be trusted now. When profit meets biology, who really controls the future of our genes, science or corporations? The scientific debate. Let us examine the science more closely. Could mRNA vaccines actually alter DNA? Case against messenger RNA is designed to remain in the cytoplasm of cells, not enter the nucleus where DNA resides. It degrades quickly and does not carry the machinery needed for integration. Case for concern. Studies in laboratory settings have shown that under rare conditions, RNA can be reverse transcribed into DNA. In 2021, researchers published findings that SARS-CoV-2 genetic material could sometimes integrate into human DNA in lab conditions. This was controversial and may not apply to vaccines, but it kept the question alive. In addition, the detection of DNA fragments in vaccine vials raised theoretical concerns about integration. While most experts believe the risk is negligible, critics argue that negligible is not the same as possible. Modified DNA versus epigenetics. There is another dimension to this debate. Even if mRNA vaccines do not directly alter DNA sequences, could they influence gene expression in other ways? This is where epigenetics comes in. Epigenetics refers to chemical changes that affect how genes are turned on or off without changing the DNA code itself. Some researchers argue that repeated exposure to mRNA could in theory influence epigenetic processes. This would not mean modified DNA in the traditional sense, but it could mean altered patterns of cellular behavior. While most evidence suggests vaccines are safe, this nuance adds complexity to the conversation. This isn't just medicine. It could be the first time humanity gave away control of its own blueprint. Why the phrase modified DNA persists. Part of the reason the idea of modified DNA sticks is rhetorical. It captures attention, it provokes fear, it turns a complicated biological debate into a simple viral phrase. For critics of vaccines, it becomes a powerful tool, a way to cast doubt without needing detailed evidence. But it is also more than rhetoric. The pace of scientific discovery means that definitive answers sometimes come late. What seems impossible today could be reconsidered tomorrow. That uncertainty fuels suspicion, especially when combined with the secrecy of corporate research. The real horror isn't mutation. It's not knowing. Real people, real worry. Dr. Joseph Ladapo, Florida's Surgeon General, publicly claimed that mRNA vaccines contain nucleic acid contaminants, raising fears of DNA integration, even though public health officials called it scientific nonsense. The global dimension. The debate is not limited to the United States. Around the world, questions about mRNA vaccines have influenced politics, policy, and public trust. In Europe, regulators have examined contamination claims. In Asia, governments have faced vaccine hesitancy linked directly to fears of genetic alteration. In Africa, where mistrust of Western pharmaceutical companies runs deep, such narratives have slowed vaccination campaigns. This shows that the controversy is not only scientific but also geopolitical. How Pfizer communicates and how governments respond shapes global trust in science itself. Pfizer's profits and perception. Another layer to the debate is money. Pfizer earned tens of billions from its vaccine. This scale of profit makes it harder for the public to believe that safety, not revenue, was the company's top priority. Every time new concerns emerge, critics point to the profits as evidence of corruption. In this sense, the debate about DNA is also a debate about capitalism, corporate power, and whether private companies should have so much control over global health. Lessons from history. History provides examples of both reassurance and caution. On the one hand, new medical technologies have often faced skepticism, only to be proven safe over time. Early vaccines were accused of horrifying side effects that never materialized. On the other hand, there are cases where industry misled the public, such as with tobacco or opioids, resulting in massive harm. This dual history explains why some people trust the science and others remain suspicious. Both sides can point to precedent, where the debate stands today. So where are we now? Most scientists continue to affirm that Pfizer's mRNA vaccine does not modify DNA. Regulatory agencies worldwide support that conclusion, yet concerns remain among parts of the public, amplified by social media and alternative news outlets. The reality is that the question will not go away soon. As long as there is uncertainty, and as long as pharmaceutical companies are seen as secretive, suspicion will linger. The broader question, perhaps the deeper question, is not whether Pfizer's vaccine modifies DNA, but whether society is comfortable living with technologies that blur the line between genetics, medicine, and industry. mRNA is only the beginning. Scientists are developing CRISPR-based therapies, gene editing tools, and synthetic biology projects that will push boundaries even further. If the public distrusts mRNA vaccines, how will it respond to therapies that explicitly modify DNA? The Pfizer debate may be a preview of future conflicts between science and society. Whether or not the vaccine modifies DNA, it has already modified public perception. It has shown that science, profit, and politics are inseparable, and it has forced society to confront the uncomfortable reality that the boundary between biology and technology is thinner than ever before. For Pfizer, the challenge is not only to defend the safety of its vaccine, it is to rebuild trust. For the public, the challenge is to balance healthy skepticism with scientific literacy. And for the future, the lesson is clear: the debate about mRNA is only the beginning of a much larger story.